This is part 2 for Module 3, Qualitative Methods. We left off with the notion of using open-ended, non-leading questions for all qualitative methods that we are trying to do, whether they be focus groups, pile sorts, free lists, that sort of thing. So we want to go a bit into the notion of what are leading questions, and how might we avoid them, and to give some examples. So there are questions, leading questions are those that give clues toward a particular answer, and the interviewee might take those clues and use them to give what they think you want to hear. There's two types of leading questions. First is a question that is actually two questions embedded, one of which is actually implicit or is assumed but is not asked. And the other type of leading question is more of a closed question, and the responses are limited. Tell me yes or no what you think, or that sort of thing. So it doesn't cover the kinds of possibilities that might come up. So examples of leading questions. Here are ones that where two or more questions are within the one question. For example, if I ask you, who do you see when you get sick? The assumption is that you're going to go see somebody when you get sick, but it doesn't necessarily say that. That's actually two questions. Do you go see somebody if you get sick? And who do you go see when you get sick? Next, has your child had all the vaccinations they should have had? There are a few questions embedded in that. How often do you use the latrines? That assumes people are using the latrines. And then it's getting at how often. In what way does the health center help the community? That assumes that a person thinks the health center is helping the community. So you can see in each of these there's more than one question being asked. And the last one. So you can play with these a bit and see if you can find out what is being implied. More leading questions. How angry did you feel when your son died? How much trouble do you have sleeping since the violence occurred? Who do you see when you feel sad? You see, all of these have assumptions within them that we may or may not know are true, and we need to check first so that we don't lead the person we're interviewing towards very limited types of response. Closed questions. These are things like multiple choice questions. These are used very often in quantitative interviews, and multiple choice questions can be great if you feel that it's reasonable to limit the replies that the interviewee is going to give. And often we ask these too quickly or before we actually know enough to really begin to limit it like that. Problems with closed questions is they are leading by their nature, and they prevent the respondent from providing new information and things that we haven't thought of. And that's the best part of this, is for us to be surprised by what we hear. Examples of leading or closed questions. For example, if I ask somebody, which of these problems are you having? Are you feeling anxious, easily startled, having nightmares? But maybe they're having completely different kinds of responses, and we are not giving them a chance to tell us that. How many drinks do you have each day? 0, 1, or 2. Well, what if they have 6 drinks a day, or 12? Or there may be other sorts of things where they really would be appalled by that. You're limiting them to the extent that you can't be surprised and you can't find out more about them. Leading questions, the results of them will be that data that you get, the words and stories and images that you get, will be influenced by the interviewer's opinion. Even if the interviewer doesn't have an opinion, it's leading the person being interviewed in ways that might be regrettable. The data will be influenced by the participant's impression of the interviewer's opinion. Using leading questions only when the facts underlying the question have already been established. So like I said, only when you have a sense that you really do know that there is a boundary around the responses. And we just too often assume that we already know what they're going to say and have not given ourselves the time to open up and give the interviewee the chance to fill in their own ideas. Open questions then allow any answer, and they form the basis of qualitative methods. They're much less likely to be leading because we're not defining the responses. But you just have to be careful, because sometimes they can still seem to suggest a particular answer. Examples of open versus closed. So a closed question would be, do you have a good relationship with your mother-in-law? For most people, when you're there, you are interviewing them, they are listening for the answer that will please you. And in this question, they're going to assume, more than likely, that you want to hear the answer yes. In fact, there's a lot of sense that the person wants to be agreeable, and you need to try to make sure that you're not providing guideposts on how to be reasonable or appear positive. Open-ended question would be, tell me about your relationship with your mother-in-law. Another example, closed, is your favorite color red, blue, or green? Open-ended, what is your favorite color? And these are, simple examples, but you can kind of see the kinds of troubles that we can get into very often. How to avoid leading people. Use open-ended questions. Don't react positively or negatively to what the interviewee says. If he says, I was thinking of getting a gun, don't gasp and move your body away. Also, don't give examples too much, because those kinds of prompts then tell people the boundaries of what's acceptable and may not let them use that interview as a chance to learn what they think and to explore the topic. You keep the interview on topic with probing, but otherwise let the informant say what they want to say about the topic. Avoid leading reactions. Be aware of your expressions of approval or disapproval. You're gasping, you're clicking, yeah, oh, yes, and the opposite of that, which might be shaking your head or looking down, moving away. Show interest all the time. Be polite. And think about how you show interest. What kinds of things, if you were watching a video of someone with no words, what would a person that's interviewing look like if they appeared interested? Probing is non-leading ways to get more information. So you're not saying, oh, well, what kinds of things do you think are healthy in this community, like parks or schools? Well, you already told them parks and schools are healthy, but instead you might ask them about assets or information in the community and give chance for silence. We are impatient people, and sometimes we need to just take a breath and let them fill it in for us. Things like, maybe repeat or echo back what they said. So you were saying that you think this is healthy, or that kind of thing, a reflection. Tell me more about, or tell me a story, or can you give me an example of that? That sort of thing, so that you're repeating and just asking them more in a very neutral, open way. Probes can also get people back on topic when they stray off. We are always afraid that somebody's going to want us to talk to them politely for 3 or 4 hours, and you're always going to try to keep the interview limited so that people know how much time they're in for and that sort of thing. So you might say, you told me about these things that you think really make you feel good. Could you tell me more about that? And that's a probe that gets you back onto topic. Avoid asking why. You may be, your parents may have said to you, why did you do that to the car? Why did you throw the book on the floor? And generally, why is a question that's very difficult to answer. People often don't really know why they did something, or the answers that they give will be defensive or not well considered, and they may make up reasons to please you. So you're better off asking people, what did they do? What kinds of things? How did you do that? That sort of thing. And it doesn't put them on the defensive or lead them to just making things up. So in assignment 3, you're going to go into the community and ask people about assets for health in their community. You'll be asked to describe in your assignment, who did you interview? And tell us why you selected that person. I left the L off tell. You may have chosen them because you think they're a great key informant. You may have chosen them because you think they work at the pizza store and everybody goes to the pizza restaurant and that they would have a really interesting point of view. You may decide that you have a particular topic. So there's not a wrong answer here, but who did you interview and what was it about them? And see, I'm using the word why. What was it about them that led you to think they would be interesting? And the answer may be, I thought he'd say yes when I asked, and that's okay too. please give us what question you did ask, and to the extent that you could formulate an open-ended question that gives you information about assets for health, that's what we're trying to explore together. Is how do you feel about that question? How did that question perhaps give you information? Did it lead in any way? We're not going to grade you on it, but mostly all of us try to think about what worked and what seemed like it might not have worked. What information did you find? What did they say? And so you're going to give us a little bit of a script about the sort of, I asked this, they said that, and it won't be word for word, but to the extent that possible that you can give us examples of words they used. What language did they use when they were talking of synonyms for health, well-being, activity, whatever, so that we get a sense from reading your interview how this person talked about it, what images they went to, that sort of thing. This will help you later guide the indicators you're going to select and give you direction and data for the next steps in your interviews. So this is a chance for you to build a bit. If there were a lot more time, you'd do more interviews, and there are certainly other kinds of qualitative interviews that you might get at. And it could be a very large exercise, but usually even a little bit of this helps a lot. We want you to pick one person related to health, but to also be sure that you pick one person who's not a health sector person. Instead, you might find just a normal citizen. You might find the mayor. You might find the police. But you may also want to find one person who's health related. That's not required, but we just wanted to be sure that you didn't only ask people who are in the health field. You'll be asking about community assets, and since that's kind of a jargonish term, what we're getting at is that the emphasis of the interviews is on health, and broadly maybe the determinants of health, or their notions of health as defined by the interviewee. And what we're asking about is what factors, things in this community seem to create or promote health or its synonym, or well-being in this community. It might be vitality, might be other things that allows you to change the conversation so that it's not just talking about problems. Too often in community interviews and community health assessments, we begin to make this laundry list of exhausting health problems, and instead we want to get a sense from people of what's working. What do you think is here that really is something we can build on, that contributes to this community? And this kind of interview helps people feel positive, helps them look around them and see what they already have, and just makes for a very different energy. You'll see in your reading about making asset mapping and those sorts of things, so that you're getting a way of looking at what kinds of things are connected in the community, in people's minds, to health and the promotion and production of health, and also sort of where are they located, what more about them. So we've specifically wanted you to go out to the community and talk to people about the parts of their community that they think are associated with the creation of health. And you may or may not use the word health because it may be laden with all kinds of meanings. You may want to try other words for that. We really look forward to reading what you have to say and what you've learned. Usually it's a very interesting and energizing, albeit frightening, part of this process. Thanks.